Emiliano, how are you?
Marvelous.
You're marvelous. Good. Good. What's great is I just saw Chris Kersey's two penguins walk into a bar, which is stupid because the second one should have seen it. How are you all? Are you all doing marvelously well? This is fun. Now, some of you probably know that Emiliano with Robin and what's your other partner's name?
Jeroen?
Sorry, I forgot. Is he in Belgium?
Yes.
Okay. Own Leapwing. So we could talk about plugins, and maybe we will a little bit later. But actually, I wanted to talk to Emiliano because, of course, you are a producer.
Indeed.
An engineer, a mixer.
Exactly.
And you're good at it.
I do try.
You're good at it. And so you got into plugins through the fact that you made music and you wanted to make plugins that would do a job that you needed.
Exactly. We kind of got into plugins because we are users, engineers, producers that we felt this need for certain tools that we couldn't find in the digital domain with the quality that we wanted.
Right.
So we kind of took it in our own hands. So like, okay, let's make something that we want to use. And that was first the Dyn one. You know, like we needed some multi-band processor that we couldn't really like nail it with all the plugins that were out there. I was like, okay, let's try to make it. And we all are like, you know, computer nerds and like math nerds and all that. So that kind of helps to the whole thing. But that's how it started.
Cool. Well, we can talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. What I want to talk about is your journey. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that now you're really sort of rolling up your sleeves and specializing in a lot of Latin-based music, which is great. And we don't talk enough about that. We're going to be talking more about it because Maria Ayurbe is coming on the channel and she's got a series of videos that are coming out. We're actually going to do in Spanish. So it's going to be Spanish with English subtitles rather than English with Spanish subtitles. So that'll be good.
That's beautiful.
I think for a lot of people watching, it's probably kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily the great gold rush, but I think a lot of people realize that there's a whole lot of music being made in the Spanish-speaking world that just kind of flies by us.
For me, I mean, growing up in Spain, but always, I mostly worked with like what we call Anglo music, like British or American music. All my career, up until like 4 years ago, I mostly done music in English, engineering, producing, assisting, whatever. But basically as Despacito kind of like blew the roof of the music industry in Latin music, there is such a demand for music that right now there are so many like big artists releasing a song a week, a song every month.
Wow.
That they need producers, they need songwriters, they need mixers. Of course, the language is always, you know, like you want to speak Spanish with your artist or certain things like this. But there is a moment right now in the Latin industry where I think it's flourishing, and I think it's one of the best moments for the Latin industry in the last maybe 30, 40 years, where, you know, the content demand is there, the industry to support that basically that output is there, because I mean now 34 years ago the Latin branches of record labels were like kind of like, you know, the small brother, like what's
the
called
stepchild.
Yeah, you know, they're there making some money. I mean, but right now there's nothing really to envy, you know, with like the main guys of the like the, you know, the British or American record labels.
Also, I was talking about this the other day. I also feel like when you go to Spotify, there is so much, you hear accents. When I was a kid, and so when you were a kid as well, the accents were like, no, you can't have an accent. And I had people come to me specifically. I've worked with French metal bands. I've worked with all kinds that they want to work with me to remove their accent so they can sound like they're singing with predominantly an American accent. Even British bands, with the exception of only a handful, like Blur and of course Bowie, most British bands sang with American accents as well. I mean, that's what we wanted to sound like. We wanted to sound like blues musicians, quite frankly. Anyway, so cut a long story short, now when I go to Spotify, I hear accent. And what's great about it is it's a differentiator. Rather than everybody trying to sound the same, now everybody, it gives a new voice. So,
don't you have that feeling, especially with artists like Rosalía, that Rosalía and The Weeknd, they just did a track like a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you saw it. Like, and Rosalía is one of the biggest stars it's from Spain, from Barcelona. Is one of the biggest stars in Latin music. But the amazing thing is in the Latin music, there is this kind of wave of people embracing their own culture, but with a pop sensibility. Like Rosalia brought flamenco music and to the pop urban trap world, which before, at least, I mean, speaking as a Spaniard, you always felt like, especially in Europe, that we always are looking up to England. I mean, because England is for us, is like the holy grail of music. So you always think like well, we are not that good. We should be more British instead of more Spanish, you know?
Right.
That's the feeling. And with a lot of countries in Latin America too, they look at England or America as like, okay, we want to be more like them, instead of like who we are to make the best of ourselves. Because there's no better British band than a British band. Like a Spanish band can try to be British, that will never work. But what about Spanish artists trying to be Spanish and representing that culture worldwide? I think we are in a point where culture heritage is kind of really well perceived. I don't know.
I agree. No, I agree entirely. I mean, the dominance of British and American bands had a lot to do with the art of music meeting the political. Obviously, the 60s happened. You've got the hippie culture. You've got the anti-Vietnam kind of sentiment, and then all the way through the 70s. And you got the punk bands that came in as kind of, because Britain and a lot of Europe was obviously going a lot of hardships. It was a massive economic crisis, all this kinds of stuff. And it symbolized change and politics, and obviously was a big deal. But I think now music has found a different place. I think it's still that for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And obviously a rite of passage as a teenager. Mm-hmm. You come up and you want to be rebellious. Yeah. You want to, do something your parents don't like. But, I remember thinking, even when I landed in America in the mid-late 90s, I remember dating a girl and I went over to meet her dad, her parents or whatever, and her dad was listening to The Clash. And I suddenly thought to myself, how do you rebel when your parents start loving like even hardcore stuff like Crass, for those people who remember Crass, or Flux of Pink Indians, like these anarchist kind of bands? Yeah. How do you rebel when your dad and your mum was listening to it? So I think music still has a sense of rebellion. And one of those things, as well as being obviously a big commercial commodity, but one of those things is to find music that your parents didn't know or like. So you can't listen to a brand new British or American punk band. Well, you can, of course, but you're like, it's already kind of been done, and probably even more aggressively and whatever. But you can go and listen to something in a different language. You can listen to something with, like you're saying, a completely different culture that just kind of gives your parents a bit of a middle finger as well, being different. And we all want to be different. We all want to, especially as a teenager, don't we? We want to kind of
rock the boat,
Yeah, exactly.
That's some of like what Latin artists like J Balvin, they have done, or like Luis Fonsi, where they took, for example, in Colombia, the cumbia, or like the more traditional music that your parents will always, listen to, but they made it in an electronic way, which for them is like, no, that's not how you do it. And that's, I think, it's kind of like the middle finger to it's embracing culture, but it's like, in our own perspective. So it's like, classic things, but in our own way. And that's, I think, the form of rebellion that is happening in the urban music, which is like, we maybe get a sample from the 60s, but we tweak it so much that the people that like that music, they think like, why, I think that's a form of rebellion in the new laptop era,
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to talk about this with the Academy because I know everybody here is, they're in the music industry to whatever level. There's a lot of professionals here, there's a lot of semi-professionals, there's amateurs and everything in between. And we're all looking to find ways to make money doing what we love.
Yeah.
And it's satisfying. We did an album with Christian Castro. That was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I mean, that was very interesting, to say the least. It went on for like a good 2 or 3 months longer than we anticipated. What can I say? Luminous Brilliant says, "Oh man, Emiliano has the totally pro studio chairs where you can drop the armrest." Yeah,
that's how I do it.
So we can play some guitar here.
Exactly.
This is I love this one here. People don't. This one's my most comfortable chair.
I have to say that I've seen that in studios, but I never I never checked it until before.
Although I'm turning around, we lost the. As I turn around, we lost the. Yeah, it's got no back, and that people think what, but it has just enough to get your lumbar support so you can sit back in it. Oh, it's so comfortable. My guitar. Anyway, yeah, this is Carl Tatz.
Yes.
His company that makes them. Who's a studio designer.
Yes.
Lee Chapman said, "Crass." Oh yeah. I've got lots of stories I can tell you about Crass, Lee. I can tell you stories about Flux of Pink Indians. When I was 16, I played with them. That's another whole other story. All right, the garage band I had in the 60s with my younger brother and next door neighbor, I named Her Majesty's Cavaliers. Very nice Ray Mears, sorry. I don't think a lot of the trap rap is more punk than punk today. Oh, sorry, that's why you think it is. Yeah, it's raw and angry, and I think that would wince at the music. That's what punk did, perhaps. Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
I mean, if it's gonna upset your parents, then
And as well, I do think that sometimes we think as a rebellion thing with the same tools and mindset that we did before. Because before, if you were angry, you would like turn up the JMP Marshall or like your Plexi Marshall to 10 and bang a guitar. Right. But if you do that, you sound old now. So
sure.
You have to find ways of expressing yourself, maybe with FL Studio and cranking the whole thing up to the 11, or using something with your iPhone. I think the era of looking out, do I want to like break the norm? Okay, I'm gonna get a Marshall and a guitar. That was done 50 years, like that Pete Townsend did that, you know?
Yeah.
So I think being not romantic about it and just, I mean, of course, looking back to learn, but I think moving forward, it's the only way to.
I agree.
To do it.
I remember I had a conversation with Dave Pensado about 5 years ago about the exact same subject. And he told me in the 60s in Florida, because where he grew up was like very, like, anybody here from Florida? Do I need to say any more? You know, he grew up in Florida and he was like, everybody was a white dude like him.
Yeah.
And he grew up in Florida and he said it was like mid-60s and one of the kids came in with a Rolling Stones single or album. It was some Rolling Stones stuff and said, "Hey Dave, have you heard of this new music from England? It's called rhythm and blues." Because, you know, he grew up in an area where he said there was no radio station that played blues or jazz. It was just all, you know, 60s white rock and roll music. And for a lot of Americans of that period, that was like they discovered it. And of course they went back and discovered blues and everything, you know, proper R&B of that period. And I feel like that's what Latin music is doing for many people now. They're coming back and discovering things that probably so many people are like, really? You're only hearing about it now? But it's a great way of, you know.
What's
super encouraging of this exploration.
You know what's happening right now in Latin pop, especially not urban Latin pop.
Yeah.
The 80s, like what happened in the Anglo music, like maybe 5-10 years ago with like Charlie Puth, that they brought 80s in a new way back. Now it's happening with Latin music. Like there's bands making almost like Tears for Fears kind of music in the Spanish language, but with auto-tune vocals, like right on, and like more urban way of singing. So a lot of young people are rediscovering the 80s in 2021.
Yep. Well, look, let's take some questions. I want to give you a chance to think about some stuff, talking about, you know, the world that Emiliano lives in. But give us a little background. When did you come? Did you go to England and America? I can't remember your journey.
No, first, when I was 21, I moved to Norway.
Like you do, you know, Spain, Norway, sunshine, you know, and then suddenly let's rush off and go to Norway and freeze to death.
Like kind of to give you a really quick thing, I had my band in Spain and then I moved to Norway for like half a year, live stuff. And my first studio experience was in Galaxy in Belgium, like 11 years ago now, or 12 years ago. And from there, that's when I moved to New York, to the US. I was in England for like a summer,
right? To
actually, in between that, to try, because I wanted to like get into studios in London and everything.
Sure.
My sister lives in London, so it's like, I'm gonna stay with her and try to like find a way to get into recording studios in London.
Right.
But it was impossible. Like I went to all the studios, like Metropolis and all this, and everyone was like, "Yeah, we have to do like a 1 year runner thing before you can even like touch a microphone. It's like, I don't have a year to be able to like live without getting paid in London. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because London's such a cheap city.
But that was like the requirements of like, okay, I want to do an internship with the.
It's tough.
It is?
It's tough, yeah. I mean, Eric's career path was free, very, very, very badly paid, then very badly paid, then badly paid, then okay paid, to paid, to pretty good paid, and now it's all right. Health insurance, pays taxes, life's good. Yeah. But it was like,
It is.
But the thing is, those people that do survive that kind of career growth tend to be badasses, and they have a lot of skill sets. So I think it's better if it doesn't come immediately anyway.
And your skin grows tougher. Like you're like, if I manage to come all this way, probably nothing will stop you if you really put your mind to it. Which sounds maybe like cheesy, but I think if you manage to do what you want for a living, that's already a pretty big accomplishment.
Lee says, one thing I've noticed when it comes to mixes, it always seems that vocals are more present in Latin music than in Anglo music. Is this deliberate and part of the culture?
There are two things to it. One, understand that how the consumer listens to music in Latin culture. That's going to be mostly YouTube and on the phone.
Oh, well.
Because understand that the majority of the culture and the Latin America way of living is either on the street, like communal, but there is no it's very expensive for someone in Mexico or Colombia to buy like the latest and greatest speaker system. So they listen on the phone. What do you want to listen on the phone? The vocals, and as well let's say the accents, and sometimes you have to. You have to play with just getting the vocals very clear, so you always be basically heard whatever the lyrics are on the mobile phone. Everyone in the Anglo music listens on the phone, but especially in Latin America, where like Bluetooth speakers are expensive to have, and YouTube is the king. So that's one of the two things I feel that makes Latin, especially Latin pop, to like the vocals be a bit more upfront. Because as well, it's a music that you listen to in the club.
So I think the natural question that's probably about to be asked, with the time delay, I'm going to ask it before somebody else does. And is, do you reference your mixes on your phone then? Do you pick up your phone? Do you send it to that? And you do?
Basically, what I do, like all my sessions live in a Dropbox folder, and I have my Dropbox app on my phone. So every time I print a mix, I just open Dropbox, play it back.
Good tip.
And what I do, I sport always Wave 24-bit, and mostly I work in 48 kilohertz, a lot of sample libraries in 48K, and it's nothing like just like it's how I do it because
I work in 48K.
Because that's in '96 a lot of even sample libraries are recorded at 48, so they have to upsample, which nothing makes sense, Sure.
And unless you've got the world's most powerful computer, you can run out of
very quickly
headroom really quickly on some CPU hogging plugin.
Exactly. So just reference, I export MP3 for that, and I listen to the MP3, not the Wave, and that's how I reference on the iPhone. And what I do as well, that the iPhone, when you turn it, it's a stereo. So if I have my phone, I turn it and see if the stereo image is good on the phone.
There you go, tip.
Exactly, because a lot of people, what they do on YouTube, they do it like this, and the new iPhone just goes in stereo.
Ah, on the new iPhone, there you go.
In the iPhone 12 or 11, one of the two, and that's how I test the mixes. And
there was a good question here, which is not Latin based, but it is interesting. Says, do artists ever rent studios long term to write in a studio anymore, or are they completely ready to record? I think they do, because everything that's recorded now, even a demo, ends up being, especially in pop, ends up being on the record.
Here's a funny thing that happens, and I think that comes with the culture of not really, because reggaeton, especially urban music in Latin America, started as a first reggaeton hit was something called La Gasolina, which means the gasoline, was 15 years ago, and it was kind of made in, like not in a studio. It was like kind of like a street thing, like more like the hood kind of music. So they were not technically wise in any sort of thing. So they kind of, the fact that they got a smash hit with like no knowledge kind of enabled everyone to say like, I can do it. So what happens a lot, and even with big artists, that big records are done in a hotel room with an Apollo because they just like, they want to get the song done. And technology right now allows with like a lot of tools. If there's like a hum of the airco, just like our exit, get rid of it. Yes, big artists might rent studios, but there's a lot of music being done in like hotel rooms.
Yeah, when we had Harmony, that was Wrecking Ball, the Miley Cyrus hit. That was started there. Wow. And when it came out, we got a gold record for it or a platinum record, whatever it was, because they used the tracks. I just feel like these days, if you're recording, and I think your bigger point is when you're recording in digital, anything, like you said, is fixable. Yep. So if you digitally recorded it, whether it's in a hotel room, whether, wherever it might be. Oh, Amber Alert. It's on somebody's phone. We have an Amber Alert.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got that earlier. So wherever you've recorded, if it's on, if it's done digitally, it's fixable, it's usable. I mean, I can name 10 different hit songs that were done at Harmony that started there, and we got name checked. And it's supposed to be a quote unquote writing session. And
especially with the interfaces that we have right now, the microphones that we have at our disposal, it's very difficult to make a bad record. Right. I feel. I mean, like, I'm sure with all the gear you review, it's always things like, man, with this price, this quality, it's like, wow.
Right. Totally. So I'm looking at any other questions? Because I will ask 100 questions.
Okay. What's just it's like you want to live other for a year doing work and travel stuff like the Latin culture. I remember that video from
Good beyond good and evil. Super track.
German.
Oh, in Germany, saying it's Treibstoff is gasoline.
Gasoline.
There was an Adele song where they used the demo vocal recorded on a couch with a Shure mic. Well, I mean, I can speak to that because we recorded Someone Like You at Harmony.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a couch mic, but she used the 48 that we have, but she sung along with the piano. And I think the final vocal is the comp is one full take. I think the second verse, part of the second verse is from like the second take. And then she did one word or one line harmony. And she only did 3 takes. Right. So, no auto-tune, just 3 takes.
There's a few good questions here. Is it harder to be a mixer in a poorer society like Peru or Colombia? Here's what let's say in the Latin or Hispanic community, Spain is kind of like the more, let's say, wealthy society because it's in Europe, so everything is kind of a bit more like, you can buy stuff and gear. There was a lack of nourishment in knowledge in the Latin community. Like before, for example, one of my favorite Spanish rock bands, Héroes del Silencio, when they got signed in the 90s, it was a 90s band, was the biggest Spanish rock band in the history because they toured all over the world. They play in Germany, in England. Like they were huge.
Who's the lead singer of that band?
Enrique Bunbury.
Yeah, I know. I worked with him. Yeah.
Enrique is an amazing singer.
He lives in LA.
Yeah,
I did a song with him.
I mean, Enrique is one of the best singers in. I'm a huge fan. Now
I want to text him.
I'm a huge fan of Enrique.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart.
The thing is, when I first listened to the Avalancha, which is the main record, it was done in a studio in LA with Phil Manzanera, Roxy. Sure. Like it was all let's say Anglo people producing the record. There was like very little talent, like Latin talent for production and engineering. Sure. In a game, let's say making like Diamond Records, you know.
Sure.
There was Humberto Gatica in LA. It was maybe in the whole thing were like 5.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult for like speaking in Latin speaking countries to get that knowledge, like the Michael Jackson sessions. So that was the problem. Like there was a lot of knowledge to be caught on in the industry before, like like if you listen to the records in Latin America in the 70s, they don't sound great. Spanish records in the 70s, they don't sound great because there was no community. Yeah. So right now with YouTube, like everyone can learn how to make, and you listen to Latin pop and it sounds amazing, you know.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, Enrico, I worked with him on, I can't remember the name of the album, but we did covers of songs, and so we did a Latin cover.
Nice.
I can't remember the band we hired. It was a great players. We hired a Latin band, and we did a Latin version. He's fantastic.
Nice.
And he's a total sweetheart.
I never met him, but like he is one of my favorite Spanish artists.
We're talking business. Let's pitch him. Let's tell him we'll do something together, because he wanted to write with me.
We'd love to.
Because we were working on some stuff, and he's like, "Oh, we should write together." And then we emailed about it a bit. So maybe I'll say, "Hey, let's do. You and I could do it together."
The guy from Galicia.
Yeah. No, Enrique's great. Look him up, Enrico Bambari.
It's there's a record that it's called Avalancha, which is Avalanche. It's one of the best rock records in Spanish language.
I agree. It's fantastic. They're a great band.
Sorry, we were about to answer the question of if it's more difficult to be a mixer.
Yeah, in Peru or Colombia.
It's, for me, one of the things, like first finding someone like a mentor to learn from, which as well is more difficult there. And the second thing is like the industry is so small that it's very difficult to sustain a career there. That's why I'm very grateful to be in a country like the US or Los Angeles, where yes, we do Latin music, but the budgets are completely are like real life, you know. Yeah. You can make a career of it.
I mean, obviously the answer I'm going to give is probably quite trite to most people, but the reality is like, technically you can be anywhere in the world. Technically. So that's the thing. So you could literally be living in Alaska or, I don't know, Greenland or, Antarctica or, whatever it might be, and work, but you have to establish yourself. So it's a tough one. I mean, obviously you've got social media, you can reach out to people, and there are people I know that are successful outside of major cities, but they've also probably got on a plane and flown into LA and hung out and met people and created.
If I would be in Spain, this would not have happened.
Sure.
Like if I would have not moved from Spain, I will not be here.
Right.
If I would not have moved to Spain, we will not be talking about Enrique Burburi. There is you can, as you say, you can be everywhere, whatever, sure. But there's nothing like a face-to-face and be friends and hug someone. It's like, let's make a record.
Yep.
In my experience.
Yep. I agree. Yeah, it's a way to, creating relationships is, I have created relationships via Zoom. Everybody's going to laugh here, but I've been working with Mark Daniel Nelson now for nearly 2 years. We just met for the first time last week. And we speak on the phone at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. We Zoom. We've done video stuff together. We physically only met last week.
Oh.
Now, obviously, there's been nearly 2 years, a year and 19 months or whatever of pandemic, so that has changed it. So 19 months of the 2 years was that.
Did you have friends in common? How did you like?
Yeah, I mean, we have mutual friends because I work with Jack Douglas and, and Shelly Yakos and Jay Messina are like friends of mine. And and Ed Cherney was a friend of mine, and he worked with Ed he mainly worked for Kem Calais, who was one of the producers on Rumours and what's the album afterwards? Why am I blanking? We're just in the room where it was recorded.
Tusk,
thank you. I was just in the room, like on Saturday. I was in the room they recorded it. You'd think I'd remember. But my point is like that's the new world.
Yeah.
But to create those initial relationships, I agree. I got on a plane. I mean, I was doing okay in England. We had a top 40 hit, a single. I had a studio. I'd recorded some stuff for Kylie Minogue. I'd done some stuff with Guy Chambers, obviously from World Party, and he was a huge writer. And I had like little credits. I had a top 40 single that I produced. You know, there was some stuff going on, but I also felt a little bit left of center for me because I was rock and roll.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, I like guitars. And there was guitar bands in the mid-90s in England, but they weren't as American influenced as I was. I was more like looking to blues and jazz and funk and the rock that was created from that. Where at that point in England, it was like, you know, bands like Menswear and Blur I was a big fan of, but it was definitely more anglicized.
Was during the time of like the PWL, like all this... like
That was just before.
That's before.
So it was mid-90s. So America kind of called my name. It was a bit more, when I landed here and I remember listening to K-Rock, and I was like, it was the rock that I was more used to. Okay. You know, I liked the Soundgardens, you know. So that was big in England, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't, you know, as big as what we were doing. And I like Mike Bloomfield said, you know, the British took American music and sold it back to the Americans. And that's you can't escape American music. Yeah. You know, I mean, it all goes back to the blues regardless. Yeah. So you can't escape that. Even the music we're talking about now has a blues influence in it, you know.
Always.
It doesn't. It just says so. Yeah. So coming here was a big deal. So I agree with you. Even though I probably could have continued some success in Britain, I think coming here was a much bigger move.
And you were born in one of in Europe's biggest music exporter, or like biggest market. Imagine someone in Peru.
Yeah.
Like, man, you realize that it's a beautiful country, but does your expectation match your actions? Like.
Yeah, I mean, the only way around it is to probably be from Peru or Colombia, but have a big enough bank account that you can jump on a plane every few months and fly to LA or wherever, Miami or whatever it is, and build relationships. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't have the money. Maybe you have to work 6 months to go once, and I don't know. Like, we are not given anything, and we are not entitled to anything. So if you want to do something, probably you have to sacrifice things.
Russell says, how do you feel about world music, genre blending? Do you feel it degrades or exploits the cultural material heritage of the origins, or is it positive? I think that the question is really the answer. The answer to the question is the same thing. If you're exploiting, then you're exploiting. If you're not, you're not. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, if I'm working with somebody and I'm featuring them, then it's not exploitation. I'm elevating them. But if I'm taking something and not name checking it and not, you know, referencing it in a way that helps them in their career, then it's exploitation, totally. I mean, but I think that's kind of logical, isn't it? You know, I'm not going to work with like a Spanish-speaking artist from South America and take all their ideas and something like that. Then but if you work with them and help elevate them, and you know, I think there was a time where that was something that was probably a grey area, because in the 60s we didn't have the internet. Yeah. So you could hear a blues record and make a blues album, and you could do interviews for music magazines and talk about Howling Wolf and stuff like that. But the problem is, not being in a global market, it meant that the only people that heard you were the people that bought that magazine, so 10,000 people. Nowadays, of course, you can elevate people quite easily. If you're a successful artist, you can feature that artist in your video. You can talk about them in a global market and really help do it. So I think it's quite different. I think that global kind of appropriation thing that we talk about is really just a question of making sure you name check and celebrate those people that you are working with, ideas that you're taking, and then it's a positive thing. If you're not doing those things, then total exploitation and you know. But I think that's logic. I think if you're a good person, you're brought up with an understanding. I mean. You know what I mean? What's your opinion? I'm waffling on.
No. I think giving credit where credit is due, it's very important.
Yeah.
And I feel that in the Latin music, there's still work to do in terms of like crediting everyone.
Sure.
Because sometimes it's like mismanagement, sometimes it's like being unorganized from the label perspective, or whoever is organized. You know, I think there's a lot of things to be improved upon in as like with everyone, you know. But definitely credits is something like, if you go to all credits or allmusic.com,
Right.
Like, for example, I was checking right now the biggest artist in Latin music that just won like 3-4 Grammys is Camilo.
Right.
And a bunch of my friends work in that record as engineers.
Right.
I went to allmusic.com and went to Camilo Mis Manos credits. It just credits the artist. No one is credited.
Right.
And he just won 4 Grammys.
Yeah, I've got so many of those stories.
Like,
I mean,
I know they worked,
yeah.
But you know,
I mean, there's artists in LA that can't get arrested that nobody will work with. One of them's absolutely huge, but they'll have a hard time making another record because they work with so many people in town and didn't credit them on the record. They won Grammys and being the producer and the engineer.
It's not even like
the mixer
on purpose, bro. It's like,
I mean, it becomes so self-serving. You know, I don't believe in playground politics anymore. We're not 12. You know, I'm personally. I don't think we can all celebrate this. I'm personally I'm over miscommunication as being an excuse.
I understand.
Because everybody uses the miscommunication when it's always in their advantage. Like, how many times have you had a song that you co-wrote registered where you accidentally got the bigger percentage?
Never.
Exactly. I've co-written a song with somebody and then gone and looked it up. They said they registered and they'd awarded themselves a bigger percentage of the song than maybe I even brought in. And I was like, what happened? Oh my God, miscommunication, mistake. And I'm just like, how come you didn't miscommunicate and make a mistake to my favor? And you realize it's just playground politics. They're talking to you like you're 12. You're like, dude, I know what's going on. You just thought that if I didn't double check, you'd get a bigger percentage on the thing. We're going to have to correct it now. And it's a pain in the butt to correct. Yeah. But, you know, and then that becomes the problem. Like, oh, well, you know, next cycle. Oh, we didn't credit you as the co-producer on the album like we promised. Yeah, well, next time we print the artwork, we'll make it right.
Yeah, I guess as well, maybe in the Anglo community, that's something that we have to fight for, and credits and all that.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about that. How do you avoid copyright claims? I suppose by registering. I mean, I'm not quite sure what you mean. I mean, if you're using somebody else's melody or parts or something, then and you're writing to it, then they're a co-writer. I mean, you won't get a copyright claim if you. I mean, yeah, there's no other way to avoid it. I mean, if you're
just have to do it. Be honest and upfront.
Yeah,
and credit the artist.
Jens says, "Did you bring your dog?"
I don't have a dog. I wish I had a dog.
Any other questions?
Yeah, there is.
Would you like a drink? Can you give me a Diet Coke from that refrigerator over there?
I'm gonna grab my coffee from there.
Grab your coffee.
Well,
did we make you a coffee?
He did.
Is it any good?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Look, it's the mega can of Coke.
A full tech mug.
Look at this.
Really?
The mega Diet Coke.
Wow.
We know you like your Diet Coke.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you? I'd like to. How can you do a? We'll do a round of applause here. We have young Mel, who is a new member of our team. Come and take a bow. Young Mel is responsible for this actually far more organized, better looking. There's Mel, which is why it's a lot more organized and actually looks, you know, somewhat professional. I mean, who would have thunk it? So we have to thank Mel for that. He's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so check out Russell's question. Oh, we already did that. Okay, is your mixing, producing workflow different than US or European producers?
For me, I see the main difference that I see with Anglo productions is basically the sheer speed and demand for time deliveries for Latin music. Like, probably you make a song in a day, and you send that to the label for approval. Then you mix it, but you have to be fast enough to do a full track in a day, recording vocals and everything.
Maria told me, I presume it was inside the Academy, she told me that even some of the biggest Latin artists are only paying $750 for a mix.
Oh, budget is another story.
Yeah. So the reason why I brought it up is like you can't spend 3 days mixing a song when it's $750.
And especially like for production or mixing,
yeah.
What what I developed to do is to, for example, my process right now is I make the track on Ableton. Ableton for programming is way faster, like drum rack. I have a push, and I have all my samples there. I have like a template where at the end you always use a kind of like a sub. I use, for example, this. If I can share some of like my go-to things, Trillion Keyscapes. There is a preset called Clicky 106 sub that is basically the sub of a Juno 106.
Right.
Amazing for subs. Then I use Serum for like more Moog style basses. Then I have like always a Prophet 5 or a like Repro from Diva, from Huey and Diva, like on a Juno. And I have like all in an Ableton track to be ready to play and like lay down. Then I export an instrumental. I record the vocals in Pro Tools. I comp the vocals, do everything, and then export the stems from Ableton, and I have like already the buzzing and everything in Pro Tools. And I put it there, and it's like 85% there, and then next.
Nice. And are you working on songs from scratch, or they're bringing in rough demos and you're just a player?
What happens most of the time is that I try to have like 3-4 ideas ready, either as a verse or chorus idea in Pro Tools, as like maybe a rough demo, or what I do as well, like I have guitar ideas or melodies or like lyric ideas. So it's never like, okay, there's nothing here to listen to. So always have like 3-4 ideas, both lyric wise and melody and instrumental wise. I try to have like 3 instrumentals just on a verse and a chorus, like 1 minute.
Yep.
On the DAW, and as well like 3 ideas on a voice. I use the voice memo from iPhone a lot, with like maybe a chorus idea with mumbling some lyrics and a verse idea. And there's no other way to do it so fast. So kind of you are pre-writing, if that makes sense.
Right. It's a fantastic question here. And you know why? Is a Spanish vocal different to mixed than an English vocal? Yes, very, very different.
Go ahead.
So when we did Christian Castro record, we did the mixes, we sent them off to the label, and obviously Christian, and he responded and they responded, we don't understand what Christian's saying. And I was like, oh no, did I comp it wrong? Did I take the wrong lyric? They're like, no, you can't de-ess it. And it's like, we were literally changing the meaning of words because we were taking like off words and just like taking them down so they weren't ripping your head off. And they're like, no, you need to hear those S's.
Yeah. Especially for someone you need to train your ear to the consonants and the S's of Latin music, which a lot of, for example, mixers right now, American mixers, Josh Goodwin or Jason Joshua, they already tuned their ear to it.
Yeah.
But it needs work because like the speaking is totally different. So yes, it's totally different mixing vocals in Spanish than in English. And if you don't speak Spanish, first listen to a lot of Spanish Latin music before mixing, because I think it's only gonna help you and your skills.
Russell says, how does song length and structure compare to US, Europe, pop and rock?
There is that question, and another question that I love here, that is, do you find artists you work with typically rely on songwriters and producers to fine-tune their songs, albums, final releases? What basically right now, the band of the artist is the songwriter-producer. Like
Sure.
The most popular figure in Latin music is the producer, and that can play all the instruments, can write, can produce, and can send the song to mix.
Yep.
That's what's gonna bring you work. And that's kind of like...
which is the same in pop music here as well.
Which...
Yeah. I mean, there's a few guys I know. My friend Sean Douglas is lucky enough to be a top-line writer. And he's a great songwriter as well, so he can come in with chords. But he doesn't do any production. Mm-hmm. So he'll work with a producer. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, it's just a producer with the artist.
And basically, it's being more popular right now. I'm experimenting with that, so making a production team, bringing someone else, because what happens is when you are tracking vocals, you're wasting time to keep producing the track.
Yep.
So what I started to experiment with, and this is something I cannot give you an answer of how it's working because I'm only experimenting for my workflow. I haven't done this with any real sessions yet.
Right.
Where I start writing the song with an artist and the instrument. We do a very basic instrumental, meaning like verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro, and we start tracking vocals to that instrumental. But at the same time, there's someone else in the room with Ableton keeping producing. So while we record the vocals, the instrumental is getting more finished. So by the time we finish everything is finished.
Yep.
So that's what I'm trying to go. But takes a lot of communication. I have basically one guy that has been helping me for like a year now in like pre-ping mixing or like actually producing stuff with me. So I'm trying to like now be able to run in parallel, which.
Are you giving them songwriting credit as well?
Everything. Like my policy is like whoever's in the room and collaborates, equal splits. I don't want to get into, no, you sang the chord. No.
I agree.
So that's what
I agree. I also love shamanic music, mantras, sorry. That's Spanish?
No, mariachis maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, from real shamans, not the guys which can take your money and slam 3 times on the
we didn't do.
Oh yeah, so yeah. Well, I mean, I think, you tell me, but I think the US and European pop and rock is fairly interchangeable now. I think of, there's definitely an American, there's a sort of like catch-up mentality with dance music in America, because it's like 20 years behind Europe, where dance music's been around since the 80s. So there's definitely a little bit of that. But I find that's also kind of interesting because now the dance music is like doing things that were done 25 years ago, but they're doing a new, fresh version of it because they're rediscovering some stuff. But generally speaking, it's getting pretty similar. I still think that there are artists in Britain, for instance, that are successful in Britain that just don't seem to translate over here. There's a lot more emphasis on melody there, and melodies that move and melodies that mirror chord sequences. I still hear a major third in a chord on a chorus melody a lot more in Britain than I do when I listen to American stuff.
Do you feel like in Britain?
But it's a lot closer, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Do you feel like in Britain you guys have more? How can I say? Like you are more used to having longer songs, or is
Maybe.
Or like the radios are okay with longer tunes?
I think there's more of a blend than there is here. I think that's what I'm going to say. I think what happens over here, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, I just think factually, because you have specialized radio stations, it's very easy here, very easy here to just kind of like go down one thing. I remember being back to Florida again on tour and being in Florida, and I've said this before inside the Academy, but I'll reiterate, and after the show, like some kids came backstage and I was talking to them, and there was one kid who was maybe like 19 years old, 18 years old, and I said to him, what do you listen to? And he said, listen to rock, and he liked classic rock. So he said like, Lynyrd Skynyrd, and obviously from Florida as well. He said a bunch of really, famous American classic rock bands. And I said, do you like artists like Otis Redding? And he goes, I don't know who that is. And I just remember thinking, I don't know anybody in Britain that wouldn't know, who likes music, who wouldn't know who Otis Redding is.
Wow.
And with radio in smaller countries, frankly, they have one time zone and they have to make everybody happy. Where in America, it's getting different now because of the internet. But when I moved here in the 90s, you could live in California and Social Distortion could be one of your favorite bands. And I remember playing with them, then going to New York and playing the Bowery Ballroom, and it was half empty.
Wow.
And I remember going, why isn't it packed and crazy like it is when we play in LA? And they were like, because we're in New York and we're not big here. And that just blew my mind.
And maybe it's an impression from an outsider, but I find that BBC is the greatest thing for music. I mean,
well, they have to cater to everybody. So they have to play what you like. Maybe you like, I don't know, 80s pop music. So they have to play an 80s pop song. Then they can play something super, super current. And then depending on the time zone, depending on the time, I should say, not because there's only one time zone, they can have shows on major radio stations which feature different genres. They have to cater to everybody.
But still, I think that's my perception of an outsider in Britain. Like they are smart in order to like be doing everything that needs to happen to breathe amazing music. For example, I think it's BBC 6 that is
Yeah.
always independent music, or like 5. I can't remember. But I started to work with this British artist. Like, he does very independent music, and the BBC is playing his music, and I find that I don't think he would get airplay in the US or in LA by the music he plays.
Well, I think one of the advantages, and I don't want to get into any kind of political discussion, but because the BBC is publicly funded,
I see.
you know, you pay like a license fee for your TV, and it's low, but it goes towards funding this. And don't get me wrong, there's no government controlling it. It's just where they get the money from. So it doesn't matter what the politics are, you know. But my point is like, it definitely doesn't have to necessarily make its money from advertising revenue.
No.
Now, I remember working with a Canadian artist, Mandy Perkins, she's a Canadian artist, and we did a song she wrote with Ryan Tedder.
Oh, wow.
Right early on in Ryan's career, and it was a really, really good song. And so the label was RCA through Sony, and they went, I think it was RCA, but anyway, whatever, Sony label. And they went to radio stations back in Toronto and in Canada, and they got her on like top 40 radio. And it was good, Canadian content, they like to support Canadian artists, but they only had a certain amount of bandwidth for how many artists they could put into heavy rotation. And then a couple of big artists released singles like a couple of weeks later, and she got pulled. And this happened, mirrored in America as well for many stuff. And it was performing pretty well, but they're like, the problem is like, if a Beyonce single comes out, I mean, it doesn't have to be Beyonce. It's got nothing against Beyonce. A big artist, The Weeknd, Beyonce, whatever it is, a big artist comes out and they've got a playlist of like heavy rotation of they used to call the A list of like 10 songs, and you're like sneaking into there, you're gonna get, because it's all about advertising revenue. And it's just a fact. And I'm not trying to be conspiracy theorist. It's running a business. Yeah. They're running a business. They have to cater to the masses, you know, and the more people listen to their station, the higher their number is, the more they can charge for the advertising revenue. So the BBC has an unfair advantage. It doesn't have to worry about that.
I have a question for you. Do you feel that Latin music is getting traction in Britain, or like Britain is quite close in terms of like getting Latin music in?
I felt like when I came to LA, just to backtrack it a little bit, when I came to LA, there was more of a Latin influence, you know. I mean, just, you know, between you and me, just, well, and you know, Spain doesn't have as big an influence in Europe as it does in America.
Okay.
When you come to LA, it's everywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
It's everywhere. Everywhere you go, look, there's a guy called Gonzalez over there. You know, you drive down the street, you're going to see a couple of houses that are built like villas.
Very true, yeah. Very true.
So the influence over here was like, it took me by surprise. When I left England, you know, Spain was, in the 90s, was the biggest book printers in the world. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah, like you would pick up a book. I've got no English books here, but you pick up an English book and it would normally, not normally, but 40% I think of all Europe's books were printed in Spain at one stage, and it would always say printed in Spain. They were big book printers. You had a car industry. There was like these things, but ultimately it wasn't as big an influence until I came to Los Angeles, and like suddenly 40% of the population's first language in LA is Spanish, and then they speak English second.
Yeah,
you know, and so I got quite a different dose of it. I think that the 90s was really good for the Massive Attacks and the Portisheads and all the bands and artists that came from it that were just looking for things that were different. They just wanted to get out of. So there was definitely a lot more Spanish. There was a lot of French stuff coming in when I left. Guru was huge. And so MC Solar was like everywhere. MC Solar had like a top 10 single in England, which is big. You know, I'm sure people remember that, you know. You know, so to have like, there was definitely a revolution happening with Europeans, the influences, you know what I mean? But I think it's exploded, definitely, more recently. I'm really tired of narrow-minded one thing per station, says Alex. Agreed. Alex says that's real Raven. Axel said, he says, still a prog background from bands like Genesis, Queen. Is there still? I mean, yeah, Queen in Britain and Bowie, and there's a lot of British people here, a lot of UK people here. That's just in our blood. I mean, when Bowie died, I mean, people were on the streets singing Bowie songs like everywhere. I mean, Bowie and Queen are just like steeped in us, and I mean, I'm sure there's people from the UK that aren't fans, but most people I know that love music, Freddie and David.
Who wouldn't? Like,
say it again?
who wouldn't?
Yeah, who wouldn't? But I don't think that tradition's ever going to disappear, because we love the campiness of it. We love the over the top kind of thing. That's just one of those things that I just think is inherently British. And it's not English; it's British. We have to agree, as a European in Estonia, Latin music basically doesn't even exist, right?
I understand. But there was a question there that they was asking, like, how long have been on a professional level?
Yeah, how long have you been mixing on a professional level?
What's a professional level? That's a very good question.
How long have you been good at it?
I don't even know. Like, here's something I will tell you. Like, I started working for studios in 2012 as an assistant engineer. That was my first, let's say, paycheck. So then I considered, like, okay, I'm good enough to be able to have my own spot at a studio. 2014, I came to LA for the first time, and I was at the studio I came here for AES in October or something like that. And I was at the studio of my good friend Rafa Sardina, a Spanish guy that's been here for like...
Did you know Rafa before?
Yes, only by email.
Right.
Because I reached out to him when I was looking for internships like 12 years ago, and he was kind enough to respond, and then we kept in touch because we were both Spaniards. And long story short, I went to his studio, and we were like drinking wine, as you do when you're Spanish, drinking wine, talking about life until like 4 a.m. And I remember asking him, like, hey, Rafa, when do I know that I'm ready to be a mixer? Like, how do I know? And
Tell me, I'd love to know.
And he's like, well, you will know. Like, and I thought, like, man, I think he's just say that to like just be cool, but
Do you know?
Here's the thing, like, I remember the moment that I felt like, yes, I'm a mixer. I remember it was in February 2016. I was going back to the studio to Electric Lady from my house in New York, and it was snowing as hell. I sat down in 2 hours and mixed a track. I pressed play after I mixed the track, and I had like goosebumps. It's like, yeah, I think I'm a mixer now.
Nice.
So I think it's a different, like, I think if you consider professional level, like someone paying for you to mix, I've been doing that before. So maybe since 2013. I do not think that in 2013 I was as a mixer that I would call myself a mixer. So I guess it depends of what do you consider success, or what do you feel like you are so it depends. I felt like I was ready when I got goosebumps listening to the stuff that I mixed.
Yeah, I'm not sure for me. I mean, I had songs mixed that were on the radio. I had songs I produced on the radio, engineered, all those kinds of things, even stuff I'd written. But I don't know. I feel like even some of the best people I know still think they're frauds, or still think that they're, yeah. I mean, without getting into like the different people that we can make jokes about, I mean, most of the guys, like if you sat down with Chad Blake and said you're a world-class mixer, I think Chad Blake's one of the best mixers that's ever lived. I love his work. Yeah. He'd probably be like, I'm just trying to figure it out. And in fact, I know he would. Jack would say, I'm not a professional. I don't like the professionals. Jack always says, the professionals are the ones that tell me I'm doing it wrong. Jay Messina, same thing. Shelley would just be like, I don't know.
Some of the greatest ever lived.
Yeah, the greatest ever people. And then there's the others, and we know who they all are. It'd be like, bada boom, bada bing, I'm amazing, And their stuff is really commercial and fantastic, but not something I go back to. I like the people I love are the people that are taking risks and doing things a little wrong. So I think my answer is, I agree. I think there's a moment where you're like, well, wait there, I'm making a living at this, so I must be professional and I must be good now, or good enough. But I think most of us just know we're standing on the shoulders of giants.
And I think what keeps you going is the fact, like, I'm not, like, for example, for me, like Bob Clear Mountain, I think like for you, it's like one of my all-time heroes. I mean, Jay Messina, I never met him, but I mean, you know, it's like
Yeah, rocks and toys and yeah.
so there's this, as you said, these giants that you always look up to. You will never fulfill their shoes, but at least your quest of like committing to be the best you can ever be.
Yeah.
And even like to your point, I remember talking to Al Schmidt, and he even himself, he will say like, listen to something on the radio, like, man, I could have done so much better. Like, okay, if he thought that, who am I to think like I'm the best thing since Coca-Cola, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then, you know, each one of these people we're talking about, you know, we could go through a list of people we admire, and they all have completely different philosophies. I mean, Bob Clearmountain works quite hard on the mix. You know, he EQs and compresses things. He works mainly on the console, hardly ever, if at all, solos. And then Al does almost the opposite. Like, he tries to do the least amount possible and preserve as much of the integrity of the recording as possible. So, you know, it's like, how do you, quote unquote, judge these things? Christopher says, Al Schmidt mixing, pick a mic. Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. And then Chad Blake, Christopher's saying, it's so interesting. Yeah, Chad will do the opposite. He'll distort it and crazy. And when I work with, you know, when I was working with, why am I blanking on his name? I went to school with him. He's a few years older than me. Oh my God. Spike, when I was working with Spike. His brother's like a year older than me, and Spike's like 4 years older than me or something. Yes. But so when Spike mixed for us, he did 2 singles on an album I produced. Mm-hmm. It was like distortions, Decapitator, all the sound toys, like, you know, the exact opposite. Yeah, just messed it up, lots of plugins going on in the box, and also mixing through the console, totally hybrid, sounded amazing. I said it was the best first mix I've ever heard in my life. I've never heard a first mix that good. I've never sat down and had somebody play me something that I'm just like, I've got nothing to say.
Do you think
I have nothing to add? This is so much better than the recording. And Mark Ender had already mixed it. And Mark Ender's my other kind of favorite mixer, who actually does a lot of Latin stuff now. And I'm just like, a lot of European pop stuff, you know, in general, not just Latin. And I'm just like thinking, I don't know what to say. I think I said, maybe the vocal could come up in the bridge a bit. But then again, it's kind of cool that you have to, you know.
But do you think because being both British, does that, like, are you mostly inclined with British mixers because of your shared heritage, or do you?
No, because I think he's the only British one I'd put in that top 10.
Okay.
Because you think of all the great mixers, Bob Clearmountain, I think, is just unbelievable. You know, Women in Chains, pretty much just, you know, rest your case. The whole of Avalon, because he also engineered it, you know, and just the story of how he, you know, they had to recut all the drums because it was done with a drum machine. So they did it with a drum machine, and then probably triggered by SMPTE, so it was probably just, you know, and then they go to New York to mix it, and they're like, it's just not mixable. And Brian was still finishing lyrics, I think, doing vocals or whatever. So they go there to do vocals, so they recut all the drums on the record. And just to go back and listen to that record and realize that the instruments weren't cut to the drums, but the drums were cut to the instruments. I mean, obviously an amazing drummer, but also great production to sit there and, you know, it's just such an amazing sounding and feeling record. And then for me, actually, my favorite work of his is Tattoo You. Because Tattoo You is 8-10 different Stone songs recorded between, I think it's like 71 and 78.
That's not very interesting. I never heard.
Done like someone like 8 tracks, someone 16. And yet you listen to it and it sounds so modern. When Start Me Up first comes out,
True.
That was like a 7-year-old recording or an 8-year-old recording. And it was all like,
he didn't record that.
No, and he just came in and just mixed it so it sounds so modern, but still so much like the Stones. Tattoo You is like Weighing on a Friend. that chorusing kind of flanging sound. I don't know what it is he's got on the guitar. I forgot to ask him. Oh, so good. It's Touch You is one of my favorite albums by the Stones because it sounds of the time, but timeless. Like when it came out, it sounded like the most modern sounding record, but it keeps all of the identity of what makes the Stones such a great band. And it still sounds like a rock band. Yeah. And you put it on now, I dare you, when you get off this thing, go listen to Tattoo You. You know, just go and Start Me Up on or Waiting on a Friend or something. And it still sounds modern and big and fat and huge. And it's what, 1980?
Yeah, I guess that was during the New York era. Or that's a great record. I never thought about like.
Well, because he's Bryan Adams is always like what he's talked about because he produced, engineered, and mixed all those Bryan Adams records, and they were huge. But that record, I feel like, because he was working with Chic. He was doing albums with Chic.
That's how I got to start because I'm a huge Chic fan, and I didn't know. But apparently he was doing that kind of like in the night shifts because the budget. I don't know. And apparently he tracked and mixed every Chic thing.
It was amazing.
I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, Mick Jagger. Like it goes back to that sort of British fascination, that UK fascination with Black American music. To be honest, I mean, you know, you listen to like New Order doing this kind of music. They were all listening to disco. You know, even Joy Division has like disco in it. You know, all these bands were listening to the. You know, all of us grew up listening to like American music, disco, funk, R&B, soul, blues, jazz. And it just seemed like the most, you know what I mean, from Europe. It just seemed like the most dangerous music. It just seemed like it had everything, a feel and groove and performances and the singers. I mean, come on, you know, Otis Redding, Aretha Franklin, and, you know, just like, so good. I loved it. I mean, even you know, I was talking to Bob Ezrin the other day. You know, Chic was what he brought to Pink Floyd. You know, that's how they got Another Brick in the Wall.
Wow.
They had tracked the song, part 2. They had tracked part 2, and the band didn't like it. They thought it was slow and plodding. So he's like, let's put a disco beat on it. So it's got that.
Now I think about it, there's never realized
It's got that 4 on the floor kick, and then Dave Gilmour plays that brilliant, you know, that D minor funky part, and even the bass line, even though it's dumb.
I never made that connection.
Yeah, that's Chic. And that was Bob. Bob coming from New York. He was like, lived in the record plant, like had all those albums being made around him, and just said, let's do some like disco, put some disco into Pink Floyd.
I never made that connection. This is like,
he said to me, he had a meeting with them. And so what they had done is Roger had, I'm giving away all the Golden Goose stuff that we're going to be in the interview. And he said that he made a book, like he created a script out of all of Roger's songs, and gave it to the band because the band were very skeptical. You know, the other guys outside of Roger were just like, oh, another like depressing album idea that Roger has about his childhood, and you know, because his father and his grandfather died. His grandfather died in the First World War, so he never met him, and then his father died in the Second World War, and he never met him, so he has no memory of him. So it's like a big looming thing to have like all your male role models. You know, at least some people get one. Maybe they don't know their grandparent, but it's rare that you have no male role models in your life. So he had none. So it was like obviously a big deal for him, and they were all like, "Oh God, another one of those depressing albums." But Ezrin made a book up. It's chronicled. Guys and girls can all read about it. But yeah, he made a book. Everybody read the book that he had made and was like, it made it into like a script, a storyline for the album, and off you go. They made it. But yeah, there's so many stories. I want to get them on camera with him.
Man, this is a good idea. No.
Yeah. It's all right. So, what is the future of this is Russell. What is the future of monetization of Latin music? Streaming, subscription, Patreon, fan-based funding, new trends? Yeah, how are artists making money in Latin music?
A lot of comes from YouTube monetization. It's like streaming, like Spotify, Pandora, like Tidal, all the services. Sometimes are like if you look at the paid, let's say the paid subscribers in Latin America, it's not that much. It's mostly YouTube. So there's a lot of it's a lot of YouTube monetization. There's a lot of cross marketing. Like for example, you saw J Balvin with McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of brands are attached to the music artist. And and shows. In Latin America, there is this thing that they play shows all the time. Like when maybe a Anglo artist plays once every 3 days, 5 days, 7 days.
Yep.
Latin artists sometimes they do like 2-3 shows a day.
Wow.
Because the logistics of Latin urban pop, you have mostly it's not even like a full band, because you have maybe a DJ with a track, maybe someone on the guitar, on some percussion, and that's the show. Like I recently,
I mixed Pitbull for Walmart sessions.
Well, you see, Walmart.
Yeah, and that was ridiculous. That was like 25 people on stage.
Wow, Pitbull is one of the biggest.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, and for example, one of my friends that I work with.
But you're right, that was the exception.
And there's like a lot of rap. So for example, this artist that I work with called Dragon Rojo, he is in a band that is doing one of the pioneers of reggaeton, and basically his live show is like 3 musicians.
Joaquin says, hello from Spain. Question for you both. Have you ever felt intimidated or offended by one of your clients? How would you handle situations? I'll let you go first.
This is something I learned from Al, which is like being always very polite, being always good, but knowing when to like say to someone, this I draw the line. Don't like when Al will like be the nicest guy, but if you like poke it, it's like then it's poking back. So learning the.
I was on a group text with him once where people were like joking a little bit too much, and he just went, "Stop it." Like you may have been on that same group. You remember?
Yeah, he had this thing which is like this Brooklyn, tough New York guy. That it was always great, but if you really went like the wrong way, he will stop you right there. So. I think being always thoughtful, but knowing when you have to put someone or like make clear boundaries and respect your ground. How do you say it? Like.
Yep.
What about you?
I mean, loads of things. I mean, there's no one that jumps out. Luckily, I've had. We've had. It's always a. What I usually find is I have a bad experience with an artist, not that often, but when you do, you just don't work with them again. Simple as that, We had an artist that Eric and I were working with, and he was obsessed that there was some sound in his vocal. And how late were we up? 4 a.m.?
Yeah.
And he told us where it was, and we couldn't hear anything. And then what did you do?
I just kept doing things.
He kept doing things, like kept turning it down or muting something or whatever, going through all the different things until he said that was good. And then when we came to master it, we had the mastering engineer listen to the before and after, and they, on their $100,000 speakers, had absolutely no idea what this artist was doing. But it was really, it got frustrating would be the understatement of the decade. It just got to a point of just like, we don't know what you're doing, and he had just obsessed about this thing. And then, a year later he wants to make another record, and I was just suddenly too busy,
One of these sorry, I don't have time.
Yeah. We got somebody at the moment who wants us to interview them and has a plug-in line coming out, and it's making it really, I'm not going to say who it is, but making it like really difficult for us to help them. And I'm like, you're a famous producer, engineer, nominated for a bunch of Grammys, and you want to sell your new plugins, but this is the way that we've got to be there and how we've got to do. And he told us that we had to all have to take COVID tests before we can come to his studio.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, well, I'm double vaccinated and boosted, and I'm asthmatic and I got a high blood pressure. So trust me, I am not in any hurry to catch COVID. You know what I mean? But, and I'm like, you want us to interview you and push your plugins all for free, but he's just making it really difficult. And this is the time I'm available, and this is how it has to be. And I'm just like, some people are just, they don't get it. We're all the same. I mean, we know this inside of the academy. There's no egos here. It should just be everybody's the same. We're all just dudes. I don't think I'm any more or less talented than you, and it's probably the same you think of me. There's nothing special.
I think we are all in the same, like,
Same business, trying to help each other, and
if we can lend a hand, it's good. If,
yeah.
I don't know, I always, I share your...
The reason why I say it is if somebody doesn't fit that mold and they're not just one of us, just another regular person trying to do it, I don't work with them.
Saying no is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's good for your mental health.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I don't have many like huge horror stories. I try not to let it go there. I think the only argument I've ever had in the studio was actually with the guy from Boston who worked for us. That was the only like proper where he was just being so difficult to work with. And I just had to that was the only argument. That was like about 7 years ago. How long have you been there?
Yeah, 7.
It was about 7 years ago. And that was actually an engineer we were working with. But yeah, to me, it's all about work. I think the reason why I say that is because I wasn't born with perfect pitch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, and now I can hear chord changes like that. But I had to work really hard at it.
It's a lot of work, yeah.
So I don't have any idea or illusion of magic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mel's really good at video stuff. Like, I bet you had to work really hard at it, yeah?
A lot of long nights.
A lot of long nights. I mean, so when it's not like, the talent part to me is like,
it's nice.
it's nice, but you have to like work hard at it.
Yeah.
I use the Segovia quote and I misuse it all the time.
Andres Segovia?
Yeah. So again?
Andres Segovia?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I did a whole video on him.
That's right.
And we got a lot of Spanish people going, oh, thank God for, yeah, but no, Segovia is a huge, because I wanted
you like Segovia. I mean, I love Andres Segovia.
Yeah, I know. I grew up listening to classical music. My father would play them all the time. But I wanted to do something on John Williams and Julian Bream. And I thought, I can't do John Williams and Julian Bream before I've done Segovia. I can't talk about any modern blues rock guitar players until I've done Robert Johnson and I've got to talk about Charlie Christian. We've got a Wes Montgomery one coming out. You've got to lay the groundwork. Yeah. You know what I mean? I know I'll get the higher views if I talk about some
My Water or
talk about 70s and 60s rock guitar players, of course. But if I haven't laid the foundation of where it comes from, I think it's all about respect, understanding. If you're standing on the shoulder, that we're standing on the shoulders of giants, that it's work. And if you work with people that think in a similar way, you might have a bit of a niggly kind of thing, but at the end of the day, you're all grown-ups. I mean, we've known each other for a couple of 2-3 years, and we still do stuff together.
I think the hang factor is important. Like, you like to hang out with this person? Cool. If you don't, there's plenty of people in the world. You know what I mean? Like, are we in this world to enjoy existence or to like be miserable?
I think my role quite often here is a facilitator, is to help things happen, as opposed to like trying to like wag my finger as though I know best. You know what I mean? Yeah. You kids of today with your modern music, it's like, no, I want to bring kids in. I want them to love what we do. And my son's 14.
Inspire. And
he likes music I've never even heard of. But his favorite band is Steely Dan, and he didn't get to it through me. Wow. But he'll listen to Steely Dan and then doop, 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 and I'm just like, what is that? They're so different now. They're so eclectic because of this, because of the internet, because they can discover everything. So they can love left of center, weird stuff, really great pop stuff, and everything in between. It's a whole different world. Anyway, I'm talking too much, as usual.
There is a question that I wanted to ask you. They ask favorite vocal mic right now.
Right now?
Yeah.
It's really tough. It depends on the song. Now I'm in that situation. I was talking to Jeff this morning, Ehrenberg, on the way in. I called him up. Jeff from Vintage King, who just a great, all-round great guy, huge fan of his. And I was talking to Jeff on the way in, and we were talking about mics because there's some expensive mics that I have in my possession that we're going to probably sell, and there's some stuff from other people that I may sell with him. And I was thinking, what do I want to keep? What do I not need? What do I use? And the thing is, a 47 or a 48, we have a 48 and a 47. Those two microphones are the sound of everything, rock and roll and Ray Charles and Frank Sinatra and whatever. But they don't work on a lot of modern pop at all. That big, thick Somebody said the other day on a Jay-Z video that their wife was a professional vocal recordist and didn't think that we knew how to record vocals. And if I'd been somebody like this, I could have angrily responded. And then and they said because it was too thick sounding. And the Jay-Z mic is very, very much reminiscent of a classic microphone that you would put up that has tons of body and is super thick. And you put it through a classic mic pre and suddenly the vocal's like this big. But in modern pop music and modern music, it doesn't sound like that. Vocals, Hey Jude vocal sound does not sound modern. It sounds amazing. It's the best. But when that, Hey Jude, there's nothing on the radio that has a vocal that sounds like that anymore.
True.
So I don't know. I think the sort of mid-range modern microphones, of which you're talking about Lewitt, Mojave, Loughton, all those companies that we've featured, in their sort of 1,000-ish price range, probably good for pretty much everything these days.
True.
As much as I love C12s, which I have, 47s, I love a good 67. It's pretty tough. I almost want the microphone to be completely transparent, have no footprint, and then be mixable.
Yeah.
On some of these vocals we were using on your plugin the other day, there was the one that was super compressed, that was a 57.
Yeah.
And that gave us totally different results. And then this was a 47, and then this was a 58.
58, wow.
Live at a piano. So a 58 on a piano, a 57 handheld, and a 47. And there were 3 completely different sounding microphones. All of them ended up with usable results. But some with a lot of work, some with not so much.
Yeah, that's...
So I don't know. I'm waffling on. What's your favorite mic that you use? I think 640 TS is a perfect example, Stephen. I think it's one of the best mics out there.
I haven't tried that one. I have to check it out. Favorite vocal mic, go-to vocal mic. Yeah, I think as well, like...
What is your vocal mic? What do you have?
I have mostly Jay-Z microphones.
Yeah, I love them.
Like I'm getting now the new, the Signature series. They're releasing, or they just released a new microphone.
They gave us what's the one we just used, the 12.
Yes.
The one that is flat, or like.
Well, they gave me one with my name on it, so I don't know if that's it.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, you said signature. I'm like,
no, this one is like black and tall. Like
I don't think we have that yet.
No.
The black hole, I believe you're talking about.
Maybe, but they're releasing a new thing.
This is the one.
Yeah, that's the one we did, and that's thick. That's thick sounding.
I don't have that one. I have the Amethyst, which is like a 67-ish.
Yeah.
Right.
I like the one you have your name on.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Nice.
We have like 4 of them, yeah? 4 different Jay-Z's.
Yeah, 4 different ones.
And they're all fantastic, but the V12 I absolutely love. But yeah, there's a couple of people that they're so used to hearing like mid-range,
SM7
super bright microphones. Yeah, SM7's great.
Especially for like, there's a lot of the thing is like in making urban, the sound is.
That's a good point with Latin pop. I imagine this is what Peter's saying. Yeah, the Sony C800 is probably very popular.
That's like, for example, J-Lo, every time she records, she has to use like a C800.
Right.
And a lot of other artists, they like the SM7B because the pop filter, and they can hold it in their hands.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes it's not about the sound, it's sometimes about like how to make them have the best, let's say, performance, and sometimes it's just being on the couch and being able to hold the mic. And that's why the SM7B is popular.
The V12 Axel is the JZ or the JZ. You say Z or Z?
Z, and every American is like, what? Like Z, it's like Z, it's like whatever.
Yeah, we grew up on JZ. Yeah, so in German it's Z as well, obviously, and
so I'm now changing the way I say it.
Karen says Z.
Z.
Karen's here. Hey.
But yeah, like the Louis, I haven't tried it, but I'll have to check it out.
Karen says she was up late mixing music. Love microphone discussions. What are the questions? What are the questions regarding mixing? How defined is your process? Are there things that are a consistent part of every mix? How often do you tear down your process and start with a clean slate?
The thing that I started to do, especially last year, I I used to have my template, my way of doing things for mixing. I got rid of everything. I started to like think of in a new way, because less and less I was just getting like multi-tracks that I had to like feed into my mixing template. More and more I was making the song and then I had to mix it. So what I did is just like came up with a system that I can start mixing already in the production. But two things that I kept, and I encourage everyone to do it: make VCAs. For example, I have 8 VCAs in my mixing and in a production, where VCA 1 it's all lead vocals, VCA 2 is all background vocals, VCA 3 is strings, VCA 4 is acoustic guitars, VCA 5 are pianos and keys, VCA 6 is electric guitars, VCA 7 is drum and bass. And here's the thing, and VCA 8 is all the VCAs. So in my mixing I have 3 places where I can gain a stage how much I'm hitting the stereo bus or the sub buses.
Right. But that comes up a lot in discussions. That's really, really good. We should get you in for a Feedback Friday so we can talk about mixing. That would be really good. Yeah, that'd be really, really good. Do we have any Latin-based stuff in the academy? We need to get something from you to go inside the academy, and then we could do mixed critiques with people.
Sure, we can do it.
That'd be amazing.
We can do it.
Christian, it's a good question. He says, why a VCA, not just a bus?
Okay, because the thing is, in the VCA, I do like automation per groups, meaning like VCA 3 is not just one bus. It's a bunch of like maybe the bus for the keys, the bus for the strings, and the bus for the synthesizers. And I don't want that to be going to a bus, because I don't want to have buses over buses over buses over buses, especially for like CPU and easy to do things.
But you're not putting any processing on the VCAs. So if you're just to make it really dumb, so maybe it makes sense. VCAs are voltage control amplifier, meaning it's just like on my console here.
That's how I learned mixing with this.
So my console here has 8 VCA faders. There's no analog. There's nothing analog in this. All it's doing is controlling groups. So I create groups, and then I have a VCA fader that's controlling it. There's no analog going through it, no signal going through it. It's just controlling it. So what you're saying is you can create individual elements and buses that go to one VCA. So you might have a bass guitar or a bass synth, which isn't bussed, but just on its own. And then you have drums, which are bussed. So a bus and a single thing then is controlled by one VCA.
And I can do automation rights. For example, this I learned when I used to assist Brower. What I learned is, like, for example, I do the mix and I have the balance, but I feel like, for example, I'm hitting the SSL bus compressor too hard. So I can do 2 things. I can, because there's a master fader before the mix bus processing, so I can pre-inserts trim down the master fader so it doesn't hit the SSL compressor so much. But what I can do is bring the VCA 8, which controls all the tracks, down, because that will send less things to all my parallel processing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, yeah.
So there's a different ways I can make a track more chill or more like hard hitting just with one knob. Because another things of VCAs is like you are controlling a bunch of buses that I have sent to effects and everything. So it's I can show you. I think it's better to like show in a track.
No,
but it's very useful.
Okay, you want to come back? You want to come back in a couple of weeks and do a track here?
Sure.
We book you?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Let's do it.
Everybody's getting this. He's saying he wants to do it. He's going to do it. No, that's fantastic.
I just, for example, for multi-tracks, I just work, what I was saying with this, there's this Latin artist called Dragon Rojo, you can look it up. It's Dragon, like dragon, Rojo is like red. We just did a single last month, and I'm basically the owner of the master and label, so we can use the multi-tracks for
nice.
This. And he is a very well-known artist too, so that's as well would be nice for the people to put a face to those
That would be amazing. That'd be amazing. Yeah, F said he got the V12, and it's best I've ever had and privileged to use, but I get the point you were saying. No, I think the V12 is amazing. And I love all the JZ, JZ mic. I think for lots of people that have never made, you know what I think? I think a lot of people have never made records or worked on records that come up on fader sounding like the album. So what I'm used to doing is throwing up a mic with somebody like Katie, because this happened with Katie's vocals. So we put it through 1028, BAE 1028, ran it a little hot, a little bit of grit on it, and then we put a little bit of 165 on it, 160 VU, and a little bit of 1176 that was tapping. So basically, this spiky transient thing just got nicely rounded off. Now don't get me wrong, it wasn't a blob, but it was all nicely controlled.
Going to tape.
Going to tape.
Or like Pro Tools or whatever.
Going to Pro Tools, yeah. I still say tape as well. So going to tape. So when we came to quote unquote mix it, we made it slightly brighter. Done. That was it. That was the vocal. And then people were downloading the multi-tracks and saying, oh, it's too dark and it's too compressed and it's too this. It's like, no, it's not. It's basically done on fader. Joe Ciccarelli and I have talked about this quite at length many, many times. He said when he came up making records in the late 70s, when he was making like Frank Zappa records, you basically sent a reel of tape that you had recorded to the next engineer who was going to do the vocal overdub or the guitar overdub or whatever it was, and you prided yourself that engineer was going to put it on their tape machine, was going to pull up all the faders at 0 and pan it around, and it was going to sound like an album. And you prided yourself that you were giving the next person in the chain something that sounded amazing. Not like now, well, here's the DI. I'm not sure on the guitar sound, didn't know what to make here. I thought, you know what, I'm going to give Emiliano like 8 guitar parts with different guitar sounds and you can figure it out. And, and so, which sometimes can be good. Sometimes it's confusing as or whatever. But ultimately, I think a lot of people haven't grown up in a world where either they've made records like that or received records like that, which come up and they sound like, oh, wow, what do I have to do? Right, Nibit?
Don't you feel that there's more mixers now that they are not engineers than before?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because you grew up as being a musician, but engineering and mixing. So you kind of, have the whole spectrum of things. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that mix records that they never tracked a record.
Yeah.
So I can imagine it has to be super hard,
Yeah, I mean, I worked from home yesterday. Didn't come into the studio. I meant to, but I couldn't because I was looking after the kids and stuff. My wife and daughter out at Disneyland, and my son was at home, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and I did a lot of work. I was talking to Lee most of the day. I took lots of meetings, and the whole day I had a guitar in my lap, and I practiced.
Nice.
And the reason why I say it is just like, that's sort of like, you sort of live, eat, and breathe this whole thing. I think we live in a world of immediacy, and we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it as well, where we sort of expect to just do a part of a process. Yeah. Where, I was saying to my son the other day, you've seen that Ford versus Ferrari movie?
I love it.
Right. But it's a Lagonda. It's a British car, and they put a Ford engine in it. And the guy that's helped design
it was in England, right?
Yeah, it was in England, yeah. So but the
British driver.
British driver, yeah. So that guy was a World War II fighter pilot. He sailed. He built these things. He drove a car that won races. Like, it was a sort of a different world. It's like watching a James Bond movie, all joking aside. You see them, they see that they can sail a boat and fly a plane and drive a car. And we probably all think it's like fantasy in the world we live in. But no, people actually used to be like that.
Steve McQueen, one of my all-time heroes.
Mine too. Yeah, he did all his, he was motorcycle stunts. He could drive a speedboat. He could do a
Le Mans.
And I'm not trying to make it about being a dude and doing muscle sports. What I mean is, like, I think we're so used to being so more specialized now, where I think that and we expect things, and people get all upset when it's not exactly the way it's supposed to be. But the great thing about coming up with music, maybe for 30 years ago when I first started, was like 25, 30 years ago was, I was a musician, and then you had to engineer, and you had to learn how to capture the sound really, really well, and then play. But yeah, I'm always a little thing, because like I've made records with really famous, talented people, and still had to punch in and edit and stuff. And you ask Jack, he cut tape. They slowed tape down because they couldn't hit the high note. You know, everybody's always cheated. I don't like this. I don't like the wagging finger, like, oh, you kids of today. It's like all that matters is the results.
Yeah, true.
You know, so I'm not going to get on that train, because you know when they were doing disco, they used to go scrub the track, mark off the kick drum, you know, with Chinograph, and then cut it so it was all laid back and a certain feel and groove. They would do whatever it takes to make great records.
Yeah.
They weren't going, you know what I mean? It's just whatever you had to do. And I don't get too much into that, you know, that stuff. But I do believe that we should be really good at our craft, and we should be learning multiple things and just getting good at it. Learning how to mix Latin music, learning how to mix metal, learning how to mix country, learning how to record all those genres, because that's what the big, you know, what our conversation started with. That's the big melting pot of getting all these different cultures and different genres and pulling it all together. That's what makes great music.
Which is amazing that you are doing that in the academy, you know, like it's kind of like, I wish I had this when I was coming up. Like,
right.
I wish I had a community of people that it's just so positive, always helping each other, like
From all over the world.
all over the world. And now, like, you're talking with someone in Australia, someone in Latvia.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, like a lot of maybe the viewers are as well thinking like, oh man, I'm not in LA, this sucks. I'm in a country where music is not. But hey, you're watching something live from your phone or like whatever, and you're communicating, you're connecting. I think it's an amazing thing.
Yeah. Well, we have to do two things, because I promised you we would do a Pro Mix Academy course. So we'll do a course for a mainstream. But if you can do something for our Academy members as well.
We can do it.
But we're going to do both. We're going to do a Pro Mix Academy course, because we need to make this fine gentleman who's sitting here for free, you know, doing this. We need to make him some money as well. But we'll do something for the Academy only, so you guys and girls all feel warm and fluffy, because I think that'd be good. Plus, you know, he does make really good plugins. And we should do something with Robin as well afterwards. We should do something with Robin.
Yeah, definitely.
Sean says, when you grow up, you want to be like me. Oh. When you grow up, you should be him. He's also, who's there any proper football fans out here? You know, this is Pep Guardiola. Do you know? Pep is also a producer, engineer, and mixer.
Warren, I was at the Latin Grammys. This is true. And I was in a Rolling Stone party, like was kind of a cool VIP, and I was with a turtleneck and a jacket.
And did you shave your head?
And I had shorter hair. And some guy came to me and was like, Pep Guardiola? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, no, dude, I'm because he heard the accent and he's like, dude, I'm a huge fan. He's like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a funny thing. So if anyone is a football fan or like a soccer fan, or
it's hard not to be a fan of Pep. I mean, he is such an amazing manager. Everywhere he's gone.
Yeah, true. I mean, and he was a really good football player. Like, I don't know if you remember him playing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
For Barcelona.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I grew up on that. I mean, I'm a born and bred Chelsea fan.
Ah, you were Chelsea, yeah.
Yeah, my whole life. I mean, it's.
I thought you were Man United.
That's funny. I thought you were a Real Madrid fan. Yeah? How did that feel? Yeah, exactly. Worse. I thought you were an Atletico Madrid fan.
Well,
you don't hate them as much.
No, actually, Atletico Madrid is kind of like everyone is chill. Real Madrid is what.
But that's a little bit like, you know, you can be a Man City fan and people don't usually hate you, but Man United, you're going to get a reaction.
Yeah, Man City is kind of like the okay.
Well, they're traditionally, obviously now they have all that massive amount of money, but traditionally they were always seen as like the working class people's. Yeah. You know, people always used to say that people from Manchester supported Man City, and people from outside Manchester supported Man United. Now that isn't entirely true. Of course, it's not. But you know, and now of course Man City have more money than they know what to do with, so it's all completely changed. All right. Is there any other questions? We've been on nearly 2 hours. This is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Here's a good one. Sean asked this. I forgot to answer. What preamp do you like with an SM7? And do you use something like a cloud lifter?
Do you have any preferences yourself?
We've used a cloud lifter on it. What was the other one we used? The Soyuz. The Soyuz, sorry, which is good. But I think the cloud lifter is a bit more aggressive, to be honest. We didn't find it made enough of a difference. And I really like Soyuz as a company. Yeah. Their pencil condenser, we use it every day.
And they're beautiful.
This has become our kind of go-to for everything, Mike.
Okay.
It's really good. The pencil condenser is fantastic. And they're a good company. Their rep, I'm blanking on his name. You must know it.
The guy with the mustache?
Yeah.
He lives in Barcelona.
Oh, he's such a...
I don't remember his name.
Sorry. I want to say Thomas.
Can't remember, to be honest. But yeah, I know that he lives in Barcelona.
So what do you use? What's your...
I got through this hooked to these microphone preamps by Rafa and Mastering Lab preamps.
Oh, yeah.
Those are, I mean, they are not like, let's say, super fat or character, or they don't have like a ton of character.
Right.
They're just tons of headroom, very clean. That's, for me, it's what I like to. I'm not the kind of engineer that likes to like process a lot on the way in.
No, I don't do any EQ on the way in. That may be high passing if I'm in a really rumbly area. Otherwise,
Exactly.
no EQ.
So I prefer to have like maybe a microphone and a preamp.
Yeah.
Maybe some high pass filter, but I'm not a huge fan of especially because when I use compression like a LA2A on 1176, if I would put it in, it's mostly for the tone rather than the dynamics. So that's kind of my opinion. That's why I like Mastering Labs, because they are like very, very clean and very good and have tons of headroom and difficult to clip. And I'm wondering if anyone is here from Spain, or do we have any Spanish people. It's always nice to shout out. Rafa Sardina is the man. And Ali, that's funny. We'd love to see Emiliano's process of creating a track. That's something as well. That's always more challenging because on the spot to make something in 1 hour is kind of difficult, but we can always try something. I don't know.
Fantastic. Yeah. I'm down to hear and try anything. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I don't know if there's any last minute questions here. Happy Thanksgiving all. My American son is in charge of the turkey. Good. Love to see Emiliano's process crane track. Yes. Excellent. This is fantastic.
Wonderful.
Any last minute questions? What have we got? How many seconds delay?
2.
A 2-second delay. So we'll give it like another 10 seconds. So if there's anybody got any burning desires, if not, I'm going to order some lunch and get on with a million things that we have to film today, Eric.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah, we got a busy day. Thank you ever so much for coming by.
Warren, and thank you guys. Thank you everyone for being here, and thank you for having patience.
Axel says, what's your favorite drink and your favorite food? How about that?
Sangria.
Sangria, I should have guessed that. And food?
Tortilla de patatas. Spanish omelette.
All right. Thanks ever so much.
Cool.
So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir,
Adios.
adios, adios, tschüss, sayonara, goodbye.
Cool.